Good morning, digital designers. In our next project, we're going to be modeling things that are a bit more complicated than what we did in the Mario World project. And so you're going to need to know a few new skills to make that happen. We're going to do a quick activity today to show you how quickly you can model things that have more complex shapes than just cubes, circles, and cylinders using some really quick shortcut keys. What I've done is I've turned on a little add-on, and in this bottom corner of the screen, you're going to be able to see the keys that I'm using as I model this. So you can follow along and try to create this on your own. All right, so let's start off by deleting out this light, and we're going to start with just the cube and the camera. I'm going to actually get rid of the cube, and let me turn on my little keystrokes here so you can see it. There we go. And let's add in a new UV sphere, okay? We're gonna start with the sphere and we're gonna lift it up and just set it on the ground here so we can start to model it. You'll notice that usually when you add a new object, it's kind of stuck in the ground, but we can pick it up by pressing G, Z, and 1 to move it just 1 unit up so that it's sitting right on the surface of the ground there. Okay, let me turn up my text here so you guys can see this a little bit better. Now, we're going to zoom in on this sphere, and one of the nice things about the UV sphere is it has lots of geometry. All these lines and vertices that are running vertically and horizontally around the sphere. And if we use those, we can make pretty complicated stuff with it. I'm going to tab into edit mode, and you can see just how many vertex points and edges this thing really has. And I'm going to start by squashing it a little bit to make it kind of flat. So up here at the top in edit mode, I'm going to grab just this top vertex, that very top one there, and I want to squish it down, but I want the rest of the sphere to squish with it. So that's where we're going to use something called proportional editing. Okay. Proportional editing means that when we move one point, all the points around it go with it. And you can turn it on by clicking this little icon at the top or just by pressing the O key on your keyboard. So with that turned on and that point selected, if I press G to move and Z for the direction, I can squish the whole top of this thing down. I can really push it down like that, or I can pull it up if I wanted more of a cone shape. I just want to squish it a little bit so it's kind of flat on top. Let's do the same on the bottom. I'm going to take this bottom point and I'm going to press G, Z, and I'm going to just squash this thing in. Now, if you roll your mouse wheel while you do this, you can see that the area that gets affected also increases. Okay, cool. So there's my basic kind of shape. Now, the next thing I want to do is use some of these vertical lines here. So let's switch from vertex select to edge select. That's the number 2 on your keyboard. And let's look at it from the front view. I'm going to click one of these lines right here, and I want to create a pattern. I want to select this line every 4 spaces. So let's count over 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to hold down Shift and click on that point. And now I have 2 of those lines selected. Now let's continue that pattern all the way around the outside of the shape. And to do that, we're going to press Control, Shift, plus, and see it, grab the next one, and then again, and again, and again, and again, and again, until I've made it all the way around the sphere. Okay, you can now see that every 4 edges was selected. Okay, now let's take those and expand it even more. I want to grab some loops here. So I'm going to go up to Select, Loops, Edge Loops. And what that does is it grabs all the connected edges that go around the sphere vertically. Okay. And so check it out. What I'm going to do next, make sure my proportional editing is turned off here. I'm going to hit S for scale. And as I scale in, look what happens to my shape. Okay. All of those vertical selections start to shrink in, and I think you can probably guess what it is I'm modeling now just by looking at it. All right. So we have created this more complicated shape just by bringing in those sides. Cool. So I'm going to tab out of edit mode at this point, and you can see I've got a pretty good low poly pumpkin. Um, it looks okay, but I think what I'd rather do is give this some more smoothness. And so we're going to add a modifier called subdivision surface. I come over to my little wrench icon, and I'm going to add the modifier called subdivision surface. Now, when you do this, it takes all of the faces on the outside of that pumpkin and it adds more geometry to them so that the edges get smoother. It's not quite so low poly. You can add more levels, but as you do, it's going to start to slow down your computer and you're going to notice that it gets more and more divided up into smaller and smaller pieces. Okay, this is giving me kind of a nice low poly pumpkin look. The cool thing about subdivision surface is that when you go into edit mode, your regular geometry is still there. So I can still see all the basic geometry that I started with. So I think what I'll do before I put this on, I'm going to go ahead and cancel this subdivision. Let's carve out our pumpkin. I'm going to use my number pad to look at it from the front view. So I'm looking straight on here. And we're going to use a new tool called the knife tool. It's the letter K on your keyboard. And the knife works just like we would regularly carve a pumpkin. We're going to cut some of this geometry up. What I'm going to do is start right here and click once to make a cut. This will remind you a lot of Illustrator. And let's cut out some little triangle eyes. So I'm going to click once. I'm going to go to this corner, click again. Go to this corner, click again. This corner, click again. And back to where I started and click again. And to stop cutting, I press the Enter key. Okay. Now let's do the same over on the other side. K for knife. Click, 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 click. Back to where we started and enter. So you can see now I've carved out those triangle eyes. We just need to delete these faces that we created inside there. So let's get our face select, number 3 on your number line. Grab this face, oops, 3, and this face, and then hit delete faces. Okay, I've now cut the eyes out of the surface of that pumpkin. Let's look at it from the front again, and we'll carve in a mouth. I'm going to do this the same way. So K, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then I'm going to make some diagonal cuts across this way, bring it down to the bottom, and then we'll go back up to the opposite side. Okay. Enter to stop cutting. And I made my face a little bit crooked here. It may take some practice to get that right, but this should work. I'm going to select all those new faces that I made by holding down Shift and clicking on them one by one, and then hit delete faces. Okay. So pretty big smile on this pumpkin, but it'll work for what I'm doing. Okay. Now, you'll notice one of the weird things about this is right now the pumpkin is paper thin. It's got no thickness at all inside those lines that I just cut out. It's almost like we made it out of construction paper. So let's put a modifier on that. We're going to come over here to the wrench and we're going to add the solidify modifier. Okay, solidify does exactly what it says. It thickens the edges. So when I turn up the thickness, you can see that the pumpkin now has some thickness to it, like a real gourd wood, right? It's not just that real thin edge. So I turned mine up to like 0.09. That should be pretty good. And now we can go ahead and add in our subdivision surface. So let's do add subdivision surface. It changes the look a little bit because, of course, it's softening up those edges. But you can give it at least 2 levels so that it rounds off those edges and gives you a nice smooth pumpkin technique. Okay, cool. Still looks a little low poly, but what you can do is right click it and do shade auto smooth, and that will really round off those edges and give you more of a cartoony look that we're going for. Okay. Our guy needs a little stem at the top, so let's do a new cylinder. Way too big. Let's scale this guy down. And I'm going to zoom in on this cylinder, pressing my period key on my numpad so that I can just focus on it for a second. And we're going to use the extrude option here. I'm going to tab into edit mode. I'm going to grab just this top face. And remember that when we want to extrude something, we can press E and just lift up. Now let's press R and we'll rotate it a little bit. E, R, E, R. Okay, it's almost like I'm building a pipe here, one piece at a time. E. I'm going to bend it back the other way. R, E. Okay, and I ran out of space. Let's just go GZ. We'll move this down a little bit. And finally, the stem wouldn't be all the same thickness. So let's change some of the thickness on this. We're going to take this top face and do S for scale and make it a little bit pointy. Maybe extrude it up just a tad bit. We'll take the bottom one, S for scale, and make it a little bit wider. Okay, and if you want, you can even grab some of these middle ones by clicking one edge, select loops, and scale that in. Okay, let's grab the next one. Select loops, scale that in a little bit. Okay, it's just creating a little bit of wonkiness in that shape. Select loops. All right, that's kind of quirky enough for me. I'm going to go ahead and tab out. Let's put a subdivision on it. And I think I'm okay with that level. We'll do shade auto smooth. And then we'll zoom out and we're going to lift this stem up GZ so that it's sticking right out of the top. Maybe tilt it a little bit. All right, pretty happy with how that looks. Okay, so there's my little jack-o'-lantern. Now all we got to do is add some lighting and color to it. So at that point, we're ready to switch from solid view over here into rendered view. And poor little guy is just sitting in the dark. All right, so let's give him some light. Shift A, add a new light. We're going to put a little point light inside as like the candle that's in there. So I'm going to do point. And you can see right now it's underneath. Let's do GZ and we'll lift him up into the middle of the pumpkin. It's pretty dim and it's white light at the moment. So let's turn this up, maybe like 250 watts. There we go. And let's give it a nice orangey glow kind of down in this area. Looks good. Okay. I am going to go to my render settings here and I'm going to turn on bloom so that that glow really pops out of there. Maybe that's a little too bright. Let's turn it down to 100. Cool. Okay, let's put a second light up above the pumpkin so we can really see it. Shift A, add a area light. GZ, lift it up. S to scale it. And then you can even bring it forward a little bit if you kind of want it in front of the pumpkin. You can tilt it by grabbing onto this little yellow handle and point it wherever you think looks best. Okay. Let's color the pumpkin. So we're going to click on him. We're going to go to our materials, new, and we'll choose a nice dark orange here, kind of in this range, orange with a little bit of darkness added. And let's do the same for the stem, new, maybe like a green, but a lot darker. Cool, cool. Okay, we are getting a really nice looking pumpkin here. Let's give it one more light. Shift. I'm going to just duplicate this light, move it over and down a little bit, point it right at the side. I think that looks pretty good. We'll turn this guy up a little bit. Maybe give him some green. Cool. Okay, now this is where you can get a little bit creative with how you do your lighting. There's really no wrong answer to this. You're just trying to create a spooky little scene. All right. I'm pretty happy with that. And in the process, we learned a whole bunch of new skills for how you can create soft, rounded, very complex objects using some quick shortcuts. Have fun with this, guys, and let's see what you come up with. Let's see your spookiest pumpkin designs.